people of the internet. So it's been a while since I've recorded a video, and that's because I've been really busy. So this is just a short video to show off a feature that I've implemented. So um, for a lot of applications, messaging is important to let the user know what's going on with the application, and sometimes you need a universal messaging system, something to send underlying messages to the user from anywhere in the application. So I'm getting really deep into Angular, and I'm using it to build this e-commerce project that I'm working on for a client. And I wanted to be able to do these universal messages. So I found this website that I'm subscribed to, AngularFirebase.com, that has a lot of Angular and Firebase related um, projects, different tutorials and so forth about how to go about doing pretty common things with Angular and Firebase. However, the example that he has here, I'm going to link it in the below the video. The example that he has here is a bit not complex, but it's integrated into Firebase. And it requires a service and the construction of a pipe and so forth to filter the messages in reverse order and whatnot. And I understand why it is that way, but I did not need that level of complexity. I simply needed a way to send to bubble messages up from the subsystem so the user can see it. So I took the general concept that he has here, and I reworked it using just NGXS, which is amazing. That's my new favorite thing. I should have had this up, but so this is a new library for Firebase, basically implementing Redux style state management, but in a much more understandable, simplified format than NGRX. There's nothing wrong with NGRX. NGRX is pretty cool. I was using that before, but I opted for this because it allows me to have a higher level of complexity without that much code, less boilerplate. It's easier to understand for me anyway, but that might just be because I'm not that bright. However, this is a cool resource, and I'll also link it below the video. And NGXX is what I'm using for my state management. So what that allowed me to do is simplify the overall structure of the application. I was able to get rid of the pipe and also the underlying service. And because I don't need to keep the messages in perpetuity forever, I just need to have them be there for a short period of time just to notify the user and to have them persist. So I was able to use NGXX and just Angular 6 to get this done. So what I have here is shared action. I have a shared folder where I have components and directives and so forth that are basically I want to use application wide. So I created a shared store to use throughout the entire application. And in the shared store, I just have my message model. I created a simple description of the message, and I have the actions that I want. And the two actions that I want to be able to do is send a message and dismiss a message. So over in my shared state, I have the messages, which is basically just a default empty message array and an interface that uses the message model to describe the format of the message. And I have a selector, which is where all the power is for this particular thing. Now, he was using the pipe to be able to sort and reverse order the messages. I don't need to use that because I'm using this selector and I'm not mutating the underlying message array. So I'm basically just returning the messages from the selector as an observable in the sorted order that I want them without touching the underlying array, um, which preserves the array itself, so keeps the order intact. So that this selector allows me to do that. I also have the actions described here where I'm adding a message to the array, adding a message to the message array in the state, and a dismiss action where I'm basically just taking the index of the incoming message and splicing one from the overall message array, and then re-adding the updated array to the state, making sure not to mutate the state, but making a copy and creating a new array from the old array. So that's pretty much it for the actions and the state. And in my component, what I'm doing here in the component is I just have a descriptor for the selector that is selecting the messages, and then I am triggering the messages, 3 messages here to test it. Now, this is how the messages are going to be sent. So I'm basically just dispatching a new message format, and that's all. So I'm dispatching this. I can dispatch this from anywhere in the application that I have access to the store, and because this is a shared module, I have access to the entire access to the store throughout the entire application. So I then have a little dismiss function here that is a part of every component, and I just added this here to demonstrate, sending more than one message or having the messages stacked. So the messages themselves are interesting. So the message model, what I did is I created. He has this is his basic structure here, so all credit goes to him in terms of how the message is being formatted. So there's a content, a style, and I've added this date. So I am pulling in by default in my constructor the current date. So whenever a message gets created, it has a current date number attached to it, right? And that numerical value is what I'm using to sort the messages in descending order. So if we go back to my shared state, right, you can see in my select what I'm doing here in my select is I'm just taking the messages that I have currently in my state, creating a new array variable, sorting that array variable in descending order using the date, right? Or to be more accurate, the date time stamp number. So that's how the messages get sorted in descending order. It's all handled by the construction and creation by default. So there's no need for you to add that when the message is being created. So once that's done, you can have different message styles depending on what type of message you want to send to the user. Right now, I have all of them set to danger, and in the actual HTML, of the component, you can see I'm using ng class and different message types here to create a different style based on which message type is being sent by the online system. So for example, I can send 3 different types of messages simply by making a slight change here. So what this allows me to do is send 10 different kinds of messages with different formats and so forth and whatnot, based on the style that I would have inputted when I send the message through to the system. So The component formatting is dynamic. There's also a for loop here that's using the async pipe, and I'm pulling the index out here with let I equals index, and the async pipe is pulling the messages from the selector returns an observable, the messages are observable. So as the underlying message change, the application, because it's aware of the observables, updates. So just a quick demo. I hope I explained it properly. I know it seems complex, but it's not. It's really simple. If you look at his video, and I'm going to post the code samples under my video, so anybody who wants a simplified format, because my main issue, the reason why I'm doing this particular video here and talking about this is because I was looking for a very simple thing to get my stuff done, and I kept finding a bunch of different complex examples. So I think this is like a distillation of what it should be, and you could add complexity onto this very easily just using the NGXX and Angular without integrating a lot of additional components or doing a bunch of other different things. So the main power behind this is the NGXX and the ability to do the selects and write selects that are dynamic and complex, that don't affect the online state of the store but return the information to the component that is necessary for what you're trying to do. So NGXX selectors, the NGXX in the whole is something that you should probably take a look at if you're interested in state management and so forth for applications. If you're building a large app like this app, which is going to be very large, it is necessary to have state management. It reduces the complexity and your reliance on what's coming from the back end. The back end can be more or less done. So here we're just going to fire off an example. So I just added 3 different message types right there. I added a number there so you could see that the messages are being sent, are being shown in reverse order. So let's try mobile and see how that looks. So you can see how that will look on a mobile device. That's kind of cool. And you could dismiss them in any order, and they will maintain their order because they're not sorted by the index, but they're sorted by the date. Right, and as I mentioned before, it's pretty straightforward about the styles and how you want to add them and so forth. So the last thing that I'm going to talk about, and this project, I'm going to show this project off a little bit later when I have some time. It's a pretty cool platform that we're putting together. It's stateless, serverless, and all that fun stuff. But the last thing I really want to touch on is the NGXX store itself and the DevTools. So if you take a look at the site here, there's a emitter with my state. So right now, all my authentication and so forth, whatnot, is being persisted. So if we go to application and local storage, you could see my underlying state is being persisted to my local storage. So what this allows me to do is kind of create a PWA without really implementing a lot of the PWA stuff. I will implement the PWA, which for the uninitiated is a progressive web app. I will be implementing that underlying structure, but with the NGXX local storage plugin, this allows you to persist the state. So the state lives on whether you reload the application or not. The state is only affected and it is only changed, like maybe if somebody comes in here and deletes the state in the developer tools or whatnot, the next time the application loads, it'll need a new state. But outside of that, the application is managing the state, the user tokens and so forth do not persist until you log out, and also as a consequence, the underlying messages and so forth persist. So you could reload the application or whatever it is, and it will reload everything from the underlying state. It's kind of like an online, it's kind of like a local storage database for your entire app because you're using this NGXX plugin to persist the state. Now, there's just one of the cool things. Also, it has this little tool here that allows you to debug your application by showing you the state. Of course, you're not going to put this into production, but as you can see, I have my authentication information here. I have my user here and so forth, and all of that is being pulled in whenever I log in, and if I log out, it'll go away. I also have my messages for my share state, so you can see my messages in their order and the timestamp associated with them. So all of that is persisted, and if I log out, you can see my status updated, my token has been null, and so forth. My user is null. I have not integrated the messages into that process as yet, because the messages are right now kind of like in a beta phase where I just finished a feature this morning, and I decided before I go forward and add my add additional things to it and so forth, and take out this little test button that I'm using to create the messages here, because this is ugly as hell, so it's going away. But I just thought I'd give a demo of it, link the relevant information, and I thought this would be an interesting video that people kind of see the power of NGXX, how simple it is to implement from just like a complexity level, the amount of boilerplate code you have to write, and just understanding the overall concept of a store, a state, actions, and how powerful it could be, how much code it could reduce. Because in the other video, for the guy to get this to work, he had to create a custom pipe. He had to create a service. I don't have any of those things. I just have an additional state, I created, right, and some actions associated with that. And I'm using the selector to do the manipulation of my observables before I pass it back to the component. And that's about it. If you look at the component itself, it's super simple. There's nothing here really except the store, the selector, the shared state, and the actions that I want to use in this particular component. And this send message action is going to go away because the messages won't be sent from this component that is doing the display. I've only implemented this for the purposes of testing and for demonstration. So I hope that was an interesting video. Sorry again for the background noise. I don't really I'm not really don't have a professional setup or anything like that when it comes to video and sound production. So yeah, that's it, and I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something from it as I have. Thanks a lot.